Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Real Time, where we talk about the movies we like.
And the ones we don't.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Molly.
Today, we're going to be going in a direction similar that we did with last year's review of Band of Brothers. We are going to be looking at HBO's 2010 miniseries, The Pacific, a sort of sequel series to Band of Brothers. The Pacific takes a look at three Marines in the Pacific campaign during World War II.
Yes. And it is very similar to Band of Brothers. I was going to ask you if, it was the same crew members working on there. What's the deal with that?
Yep, same. It had the same people developing the series, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks. They decided that they wanted to do a series on the Pacific campaign, so this is what we got.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Now, a little background on the Pacific campaign. So, as you all know, I would hope, the U.S. got into World War II after the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor. Now, most people know that. However, what most people don't know is that the United States strategy for their war in the Pacific was predicted by a U.S. Marine, Lieutenant Colonel Earl Ellis. Now, the thing about this was he predicted the way this war would go over 20 years before the actual war started for us.
Well, how did he do that?
Well, he basically took a boat hopping around various islands in the Pacific and in Japan itself, and studied the general military climate of the country at the time. See, because after the Meiji Restoration in the 1800s, Japan would, well, their emperor would fall to men who were obsessed with keeping with the samurai tradition of old. So they basically used a bastardization of Bushido to trick the nation's youth into giving up their lives needlessly for the emperor. Death would be the highest form of honor, and to surrender would be the ultimate dishonor, more or less. If you weren't, if you didn't see the enemy as anything less than the scum underneath your shoe, you would be looked down on. You'd be called weak. You might even be taken off of your family tree, where you would be buried. That's what was going on in the climate at the time.
So what did this guy get right, I guess?
Well, basically, how we would wage war with Japan, going from island to island, taking them out as the campaign grew.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, back to the miniseries. This series takes a look at three separate Marines. So, in a way, it's a bit more focused than Band of Brothers was. Band of Brothers, of course, looked at the exploits of an entire company in the Army Airborne, the 101st Airborne Infantry, an Easy Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. This is looking at three Marines in an entire division, the 1st Marine Division. Now, the three Marines, I can't speak, that we're looking at are Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, Private First Class Robert Leckie, and Corporal Eugene Sledge. Now, the latter two of these three men would go on to write books about their exploits during the war, that being Sledge and Leckie. John Basilone, unfortunately, would not be able to, as he was killed in action during the war. I guess spoiler alert for history.
Yeah, it's history, so I guess you can't really spoil history.
But in a way, like I said, it's more focused than Band of Brothers because we have three central protagonists that we follow throughout the series, as opposed to a rotating cast of people in a single company. But we do get episodes told from certain points of view on Band of Brothers.
Yeah. It seems like it kind of goes from one character to the next and then to the next.
More
like that,
More or less, yeah. Now, less focused than Band of Brothers, and I promise this isn't going to be a straight comparison between these two series for the whole however long we're going to be looking at this series. Less focused in that, well, yes, we're only looking at three main protagonists. In Band of Brothers, everyone that we do get POVs from are all within the same company. So we get generally the same experience from all of these men.
Yeah, within one character's episode or all the other characters, but it's just one character gets more focus with Band of Brothers.
Yeah, with that, you know that everyone, no matter which character who happens to be focused on for this particular episode, is going through the exact same thing as any other protagonist that had been focused on before or after.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
With this, we get distinct, more or less, experiences. Now, there are some overlaps. For example, John Basilone and Robert Leckie were both on Guadalcanal, and then Leckie and Sledge were both on Peleliu. However, their experiences also, they take forks in the road, as they did in real life. So you can't deviate too much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even then, with some of their experiences, we only see what they experienced. For instance, with John Basilone, we see him on Guadalcanal, and then later on in his final episode, we see him on Iwo Jima. Now, we don't see too much of the Battle of Iwo Jima itself, since John Basilone died the very first day of it.
Yeah.
February 19th, 1945, which is when we're hoping to get this episode up. That's particularly notable because February 19th was, again, the day that the U.S. invaded Iwo Jima. However, this was also the first day that the nation of Japan had been invaded by anyone since, well, the Mongol invasions in the 1200s.
Huh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and even then, when the Mongols did try to invade at other times, they were pushed back by the kamikaze, the Divine Wind. Basically, they had their fleets dashed to the rocks in the ocean by typhoons, which gave the Japanese from then until the 1940s the impression that they were protected by the gods.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, February 19th, very significant date for this.
Yeah. I see why.
Anyways, so this is taking us a while to actually get to who's in this thing, but
yeah, it's taking you a while, but go ahead.
Look, the backstory was needed for all of this.
It's very important. Yes.
Now, PFC Robert Leckie was portrayed by James Badge Dale. Now, James Badge Dale has been a character actor in various things, whether it be 2006's Departed or 2013's Iron Man 3, but I feel like this was his, the big role that most people know him from.
Yeah, I'm sorry, which character was this?
Leckie.
Okay, yes.
Now, James Badge Dale kind of strikes me as he's got sort of a Danny Masterson energy, but without the raping and the Scientology covering up for his heinous crimes.
Okay.
I'm saying like he could probably fit in the same sort of archetype, the same sort of mold as Danny Masterson's characters. Like I could easily see him taking over as Hyde on That 70s Show, for instance.
Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Joseph Mazzello plays Corporal Eugene Sledge. To me, he seems to be more of a central protagonist than Leckie was.
It seems he had a lot more episodes, I thought, but maybe that was just what it seemed like.
Maybe since he got the more attention in the latter episodes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, Leckie wrote a book called Helmet for My Pillow, detailing his experiences in the war, and Sledge wrote a book called With the Old Breed. I've read both of them. I prefer I prefer Sledge's book myself. I feel like it's a more interesting read, in all honesty.
Okay.
Now, most of you would know Joseph Mazzello as Tim from Jurassic Park, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. All grown up.
All grown up and doing a great job in the series. John Cena plays Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone. Uh, I haven't seen this actor in too many things, or really anything at all, but I feel like he was very good in this role.
Yeah, he did a really good job. I don't remember ever seeing that actor before, though. Yeah.
We also get appearances from actors who would become big in the 2010s, such as Josh Hellman, Rami Malek.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting to watch this after you seeing Bohemian Rhapsody, where we see Malik and Mazzello both in that movie.
Yeah, and they play buddies on this series. That's kind of funny.
We also get appearances from William Sadler as basically the biggest badass that the Marine Corps ever knew, Lieutenant Colonel Chesty Puller.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Put it in perspective about Chesty Puller. So Chesty Puller was awarded the Navy Cross 5 times. All right, the Navy Cross is the highest award that the Navy can bestow any of its sailors or Marines. Now, some of you may be saying, Tyler, no, that's the Medal of Honor. Wrong. The Navy does not award the Medal of Honor. That's the President.
Oh, okay. So this is
But
the highest one the Navy can.
in the hierarchy of military awards, yes, the Navy Cross is second only to the Medal of Honor. But the Navy awards the Navy Cross, not the Medal of Honor. Almost messed that up.
Yeah, you did.
And this man earned 5 of them. I almost said 1.
That's a lot.
And he earned them in various wars and campaigns. The Banana Wars, World War II, Korea. This man retired in 1955. He'd been serving since World War I.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and he reached the rank of Lieutenant General, and at one point was considered for the role of Commandant of the Marine Corps, basically the head guy in charge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, John Basilone, he comes second to Chesty Puller when it comes to badasses that the Marine Corps revere. John Basilone was the first Marine to have was the first enlisted Marine to have earned the Medal of Honor in World War II and live. Others had were posthumously awarded this medal for actions prior to John Basilone, but he was the first really big. He was the first one that the Marine Corps saw and decided to use to drum up support for the war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the bond tours that he gets sent on in this series, that actually happened. He was taken from Guadalcanal after his actions there, sent on a bond tour, but he got tired of it because, well, really he didn't like it, you know. So he basically he went to the Commandant of the Marine Corps, Alexander Vandergriff, and said, "Look, I want back in," and he got it.
Yeah, you could tell while watching the series, his character is very. You could tell he just doesn't feel right with him being living this life of luxury while he knows his buddies are back still fighting and the war is still going on.
Yeah. So, John Basilone, well, prior to the Marines, he was in the Army in the Philippines, which gave him the nickname Manila John because he was stationed in Manila.
Makes sense.
But while he was in the Army in the Philippines, it didn't really sit right to him because he was told that should the Japanese attack them, because he was in the Army in the 30s, back when Japan was making moves, but not quite acting against the U.S. yet. I'm going all over the place with this. I know it's important. However, he felt like the Army wasn't really the place for him after his contract with them expired. So he joins the Marines because he thought that they were going to be the best. Look, I was in the Army. I'm currently in the Navy. I'm not gonna say he's wrong, but I'm not gonna outright and say he's right either.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
So, John Basilone, he gets stationed at Camp Pendleton, where, funnily enough, my parents got married there.
That is kind of funny.
where he meets Lena Riggi, who he later marries, but unfortunately he left her as a widow after he was killed in action on Iwo Jima.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
Lena would never remarry because she said, once you've had the best, why settle?
Yeah, that's true.
Ugh, that makes me sad.
Yeah, it does. It's pretty sad.
So, nowadays, John Basilone is one of the most revered figures in the Marine Corps. And you can see why. In fact, this series, I think, really downplays him.
Um, yeah, maybe. I'm not for sure, but he does seem like, yeah, a really cool guy.
Which, let's put it like this, okay? The actions that we see of him that he took to earn his Medal of Honor, in real life, he did that for 3 days, not just one night.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And in the show, his actions were combined with the actions of another Medal of Honor recipient on Guadalcanal, Colonel Mitchell Page, who, funnily enough, my dad has actually met.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So, this the show does downplay John Basilone, but I feel like it's in a sort of a similar situation to with Audie Murphy's portrayal of, well, himself in his movie To Hell and Back, maybe downplaying it because they figured the audience wouldn't believe the actual events.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with Desmond Doss in Hacksaw Ridge. A lot of other things happened to these guys that they just didn't put on screen because the audience isn't going to believe these.
Yeah, the audiences would just think they're going too far. Yeah.
They could have gone a lot farther.
Yeah.
Now, what are your general thoughts on this series? I know we've been going all over the place when it comes to historical background and all that, but what are your general thoughts?
Yeah, okay. So just, generally speaking, I thought that this was very good. It was very interesting, very entertaining. I've probably said this before, but I usually don't watch like military movies, war movies, stuff like that. Just because, they usually make me sad. But this one was very interesting, and it did a good job of holding my attention.
Yeah, I saw this series when it first came out with my dad. We were living on Okinawa at the time. Actually, this was the second time we were stationed there. This is back in 2010, like I said, and which when it came to episode 9, when it was depicting the Battle of Okinawa, it sort of hit differently,
Yeah, I can see that.
Which, in comparing this to Band of Brothers, there are things that this does in fact do better than Band of Brothers. For instance, I feel like this does a better job in showing a more visceral, raw campaign of World War II than Band of Brothers did, which from what veterans from the European and Pacific theaters have said, the guys in the Pacific got it a lot worse.
That's what it sure seems, because Band of Brothers focused on the European countryside, so they had a very much different experience than the Pacific. These guys seemed to have to do like a lot more, it seemed.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said with the general military the general military sort of state of mind that Japan was in at the time, they were definitely far more prone to dehumanize their enemy than the Germans were. I say this even though the Germans were committing more than their fair share of war crimes in the Eastern and Western theaters of the European theater. But it's I look. I don't want to be that guy and say this, but it feels different,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Which in Band of Brothers, we never see any of the Germans commit war crimes. You know, outside of episode 9, where we see the concentration camp, but we don't actually see any German soldiers commit any war crimes.
Yeah, it's more just all action and fighting.
Whereas with the Pacific, we see the aftermath of Japanese war crimes. For instance, in the first episode, Lecky and some of the Marines he's with, they come across some. They come across the corpses of some dead Marines, some of whom have their penises chopped off and stuck in their mouths. They have all sorts of, you know, atrocities committed to them, which what actually happened in the Pacific Campaign.
Yeah, yeah, you see a lot more hardcore stuff.
At one point, one of the Japanese soldiers from the previous night's, fighting, plays possum so that he can get a Navy corpsman to come to him when he asks, then he blows the two of them up.
Yeah. And the one that comes to my mind, which maybe just because we watched it recently, is when the Japanese send over civilians, and it's a mom with a baby, and she has bombs strapped to her. So whenever she crosses enemy lines, they explode.
Yeah, they kill kids on the Pacific. You didn't see that in Band of Brothers.
No, yeah, there's baby death and child death.
Well, I guess there was that one child or teenager Wehrmacht soldier that Richard Winters shoots, but he's a combatant. It's different.
Yeah, this is different. This is innocent people.
Yeah, innocent people on Okinawa, which on the various islands that the Marines were trying to take from the Japanese, there were sometimes civilians living on these islands, and the Japanese would tell them that if the Marines captured them, they would rape and torture them and do all sorts of unspeakable atrocities, things that the Japanese soldiers were doing to innocent civilians in the Philippines, China, Korea, Vietnam, basically anywhere they went. So they figured that the Marines were going to do the exact same thing to the civilians that were under Japanese control, which on several islands like Saipan, Okinawa, Guam, it would lead them to commit suicide so that they wouldn't be captured.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Look, you ain't seen the half of it. Just if you want some good resources for seeing what sort of atrocities the Japanese would do to civilians, I'd recommend James Bradley's Flyboys. Is a very interesting story on B-17 bomber pilots in the Pacific Campaign. It goes over a whole lot of messed up stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day.
Maybe. But back to the Pacific. Yeah, and at one point, they were going to interview Bill Garnier from Band of Brothers for the Pacific. He more or less said that you guys want to hear some stories? Ask the Marines in the Pacific.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So a lot more visceral takes on war in this one. It's definitely something that I, for lack of a better word, appreciate from this series, because this is, from my understanding, this is actual real stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very real.
And very well told. You get this. You get to know these three Central Marines, and they seem, well, for lack of a better word, real, which helps that they were. But you really get to know them. You get to know their feelings, their general mindsets during their campaigns. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
So as far as central protagonists go, I definitely feel like Band of Brothers and the Pacific, I feel like they're about equal in these respects, even though really the most central main protagonist on Band of Brothers was Dick Winters. He had the most episodes devoted to him, as, and while you do have central protagonists for all the other episodes, they're really only focused on in one episode each.
Yeah.
However, I feel like they also get equal screen time and being through their roles as secondary characters in the other episodes.
Yep.
So that's why I would say that they're equal in that regard.
Yeah. I would agree with you.
However, I think when it comes to the side characters, Band of Brothers is definitely better handled.
Yeah, they have more in-depth characters maybe.
Because, well, yes, Lecky's gang of friends and Sledge's friend Sid Phillips are interesting enough characters. I don't find myself remembering too much about them.
Yeah, I don't really either.
Whereas with Band of Brothers, I can tell you all sorts of things about, say, for instance, Captain Spears or Nixon or Malarkey, Buck Compton, any of these guys. I could tell you so much about them just based off the series. Whereas with the Pacific, I don't feel like they were as fleshed out as their counterparts on Band of Brothers.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
But that's not to say that they're mishandled, just could have been done better.
Yeah, maybe a little bit better.
Both episodes have the same amount of episodes, and they're roughly speaking around the same length, so no real complaints there. Although, with episode 10, I feel like when they're coming home, I feel like we could have seen more to it. The last 5 minutes of the episode proper are taken up by telling us where everyone is, where they went, what happened to them after the war. Now, Band of Brothers did that as well. However, I think they did it better, given that this episode had a narrator throughout the episode, Dick Winters, who we've grown attached to throughout the whole series. Whereas with the Pacific, we got narration only occasionally, and that was whenever Robert Leckie was quote unquote writing to his friend back home, Vera Keller.
Yeah.
If they had kept up consistent narration for all three of our main characters throughout their episodes, I feel like that could have been an interesting thing to see at the end, telling us what happened to them and maybe seeing what happened to them. I do like the fact that they showed us the characters in the series and what they looked like in real life, especially the ones who were narrated in the intros for their episodes, just like with the veterans on Band of Brothers.
Yeah, I like that. It's pretty cool. It's nice to see where they ended up in life.
Which, unfortunately, the Pacific had only 3 surviving veterans after to be interviewed, whereas Band of Brothers had a lot more.
Yeah, they did.
But you can't really fault the Pacific for that at all.
No, yeah. That's out of their control.
Now, an interesting thing to note about the Pacific, Eugene Sledge's family was very impressed by Joseph Mazzello's performance as him, so they gave him the pipe that Sledge carried with him during the war.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
So it's nice to see these the real life families of these men give their stamp of approval, because I would feel like that would be, well, the most important approval to get. Like, it doesn't matter if me or really any Marine serving nowadays approves of it. What really matters is to get the approval of the people that you're portraying, or in this case, their families.
Yeah, very important. So that's good. That's a good sign that the families were on board with this.
Which they interviewed Sidney Phillips for the intros, who was Eugene Sledge's best friend. So I would assume his input would really help out with the portrayal of Sledge in particular.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to have people who know your character that you're representing, or person. I guess it's not a character. I don't know.
All right, now, who would you say was your favorite character in all of this?
You know, it's really hard to pick. Um, it is really hard to pick a character. I'm leaning towards Sledge, but Lecky was really cool too. I don't know. It's hard to choose. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, I prefer Eugene Sledge's book over Lecky's. Uh, the nice thing, though, on Audible, um, their actors from the Pacific read the books, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that's I like that.
Plus, Joseph Mazzello is, of course, not a good old Southern boy from Mobile, Alabama. I probably messed that up. I'm sorry. Not really.
That's all right.
But he performs it as Sledge. He doesn't talk in his normal voice.
Oh yeah, nice. That's cool.
As for me, like you said, it is hard, but I'm going to go with John Basilone because I love his portrayal. I love how effective of a leader he was, and how he was portrayed, and I just love John Basilone. This guy was a Marine's Marine. You know, he was tough. He cared for his men. He led from the front. He should have gotten another Medal of Honor for his actions on Iwo Jima, but the Department of Defense or whoever made a rule that you can't be awarded it twice because I don't know why. It's ridiculous, though.
Yeah, that seems like a stupid rule because if you deserve it twice, you go ahead and give it twice. I don't know.
Which I'm gonna have to look this up, but so 19 men were awarded the Medal of Honor twice. Most of them were for the same action, but they were awarded the Navy Medal of Honor and the Army Medal of Honor because they were Marines serving with Army units or vice versa, from my understanding.
So does that count as having it twice and goes against the rule or no?
Well, this is before the rule was established.
Okay.
However, there were a couple Marines who were awarded it twice for separate actions, one of whom was Marine General Smedley D. Butler, and another was Marine Gunnery Sergeant Dan Daly. He was awarded it for the Boxer Rebellion in 1900 and for actions in Haiti in 1915. They tried to put him up for it for his actions in World War I, but it was downgraded to the Navy Cross. Stupid, I know, but...
Yeah.
However, John Basilone was awarded the Navy Cross for his actions on Iwo Jima, so he does have the distinction of being one of, if not the only, enlisted Marines to have been awarded the Navy Cross and the Medal of Honor.
Yeah, that's still interesting and, very impressive, so...
Now, which episode was your favorite?
I don't know if I have a favorite episode.
Honestly, I might not either. I do have a particular soft spot for episode 9 when they're on Okinawa, which, of course, is because I used to live on Okinawa myself, and I've been to some of the battle sites of the Battle of Okinawa, so I have that working for me.
Yeah, I did like that episode. There was a lot of very strong and powerful, maybe not powerful, but like impactful images and scenes that really stick with you, especially it being the second to last episode.
Yeah, I agree. You really get you really get more of a sense of the war that Eugene Sledge would of how it would affect him in the next episode after he finally returns home.
Yeah.
Which there's some interesting things that I noticed in this episode. For one, after they were using some of the ruined mortar shells, Snafu takes it out of the mortar tube and buries it. When I was living on Okinawa, there was all sorts of PSAs and stuff telling us that if you find any unexploded ordnance, leave it the hell alone because it's probably going to explode if you mess around with it because of all of instances like this, whether it be stuff that didn't go off when it was supposed to or things that, or like landmines that were just left unattended, there is still, and this goes for more than just Okinawa, but all across different uh, campaigns of World War II, among other conflicts, there's a whole series of unexploded ordnances that just hasn't been found.
Hmm. Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yep.
Um, and another thing, some of the like we said before with some of these families and kids getting killed, that was another thing that happened when some of the Okinawa civilians tried to go over to the Americans for refuge. They would get gunned down by the Japanese,
Yeah.
which at the time Okinawans were quite seen as Japanese. It's a it's a weird situation. Like they have some Chinese influence, they have some Japanese influence. They're like now they are seen as Japanese, but at the time, not quite.
Okay.
Although, another interesting thing that I noticed throughout the series was you could see the escalation of technology that the Marines are using throughout the war.
Yeah.
Like for instance, when we see Lecky and the Marines land on Guadalcanal in the first episode, we see them with these 1917 water cooled machine guns. Basically, they stick a tube in the near the barrel of the gun, and water is used to cool the barrel so that it doesn't overheat.
Yeah.
But later on, they move on to the 1919 Browning machine guns, which are air cooled.
Okay.
Historically speaking, the Marines get the Marines don't get the new gear until the Army has had it, which we also see since they start off the war with these bolt action Springfield rifles, but later on they move on to the semi-automatic M1 Garands and M1 carbines that the Army was using before.
Okay. Interesting.
Which, yeah, it's just nice to see the actual progression. Like they kind of sort of pointed out like in episode 2 when they try to steal the new stuff from the Army, but it's more of like a progression in the background.
Yeah. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't notice it, but it doesn't surprise me that you did. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So, let's see. Now, historically speaking, this has been pretty fairly accurate to the actual events. Now, there have been some things that were changed around here and there, such as with the character of Gunny Haney that we see with Sledge and his company. Some of the events were changed around to keep characters around for a bit longer than they were in real life. Other times, characters are composited into each other to form a more seamless narrative, and some characters are not necessarily fake or like made up, but just altered.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing that I suppose you have to do when you have room for fictionalization, so that you can create a more flowing narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to for movies and shows.
More or less, when I was when I did get to read Sledge and Lecky's books, it read like the series. Although some of the biggest inaccuracies do come from some of Lecky's stories, such as when they were in Australia. Lecky didn't have a single romance with this Australian girl named Stella. She was made up for the series. Dude was laying pipe throughout Australia.
Nice.
So he was never depressed about one single girl while on leave in Australia. It was just, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was purely just for the entertainment purpose.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But do you have anything more to say on the Pacific?
No, I don't think so. I think you pretty much said everything.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, I think so.
So we will catch you next time.
See you next time.